Director with the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. And right now we are hosting a session on rural farmers markets as an open forum. And it would be great if whoever is in attendance from a rural farmers market or rural area just had things that you would want to organically talk about, or if there's something like really burning that you want to discuss with other rural market managers or any volunteers or whoever else is associated with rural markets. I do have about a half a dozen prepared questions to get conversation going. If anyone doesn't have anything they'd like to bring up first. But first, I'm just going to open the floor to anyone who might want to bring up anything special right off the bat about rural farmers markets. Does anyone have anything in particular?
How are you guys defining rural?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
How are you defining rural?
Well, that's a good question. That's something I was almost going to make make a intro question was, how do y'all define rural? Because, there's some people that are in this session that were actually in the urban session last year, so, I especially in New Mexico, where so much of it is rural, it can mean different things to different people. So Pauline, how would you define rural for your own?
I don't know, like every year I flip between which session I should go to. And then I was kind of like, well, maybe I should just go to both. Because we're in Aztec and we're, a small city, but we're near a larger city. And so all the vendors kind of go between all the markets. So I don't know if like you people feel it's like the size of the market or what necessarily,
It would be more focused on the region, not the size of the market. I mean, you could have, this would be kind of a long shot, but you could have a massive farmers market in the middle of nowhere, and it would be considered a rural farmers market. So, and you could have a small farmers market in the middle of Albuquerque, and it would be considered an urban farmers market. So it's the definition is more based upon the geography of where the market is located rather than the size of the market itself. But I don't think there's any like hard and fast rule about what makes a rural farmers market rural. And a lot of it also depends upon what part of the country you're in. There are markets in North Carolina that consider themselves rural that we probably wouldn't. So a lot of it is just reflective of local, statewide kind of culture, geography, proximity to other food sources, and a wide variety of things like that. So there's really no hard and fast definition about what makes a rural farmers market rural, at least that I know of.
I feel that Bosque Farms is about as rural as you can get, even though we're surrounded by a large city and another large village. So yeah, Bosque Farms, Los Unos, that's also rural. Your definition is spot on. It's anything.
So George, I'm curious about, even though you're so close to, an urban area, in your view, what makes your market rural for you?
The fact that our market is centrally located within Valencia County, all of our vendors are pretty much backyard vendors, growers. They come from Isleta, from Bernalillo County, from Socorro County, but we are all in a small community of growers that visit the market, and people just enjoy our atmosphere. It's cold, it's hot, it's dusty, It's just whatever else New Mexico is, and we get along with each other just fine. And I think that's what causes us to be a rural market. Yes.
Okay. I've been to your market. It's lovely. You know, it's very welcoming.
Thank you. Invite
Anyone
anybody
else?
else that would like to come to our market. They're more than welcome to come by. Just visit and chat with us is fine. We do have our social distancing from vendor to vendor, which is something that I instituted myself for safety reasons and for the comfort of our, not only our shoppers, but our vendors as well. So yeah, come down and visit with us.
Thank you, George. Is there anyone else who has any thoughts about what does or does not make their market rural? No? Okay.
Christina, something that keeps coming up, and I'm Kirsten Hansen, and I'm running a program for the NMFMA. I'm not a market manager, but in relation to trying to do double up food bucks and my Fresh RX program, we often run into issues, especially with rural markets, of infrastructure. You know, when we launch something online, our rural markets are often the first ones to say, hey, we want this on paper rather than online. So I think there's also sort of it's not hard and fast. There isn't a line down the middle between rural and urban, but the rural markets sometimes face unique challenges in getting access to technology and some of that infrastructure that, you know, folks more centrally located can take for granted.
That's very true. You know, I several years ago, I saw a statistic that 25% of New Mexico does not have reliable internet. I know that some work has been done to address that since I've read that statistic, but that's not true of other areas of the country that are rural and they all have great internet. I mean, granted, you know, one of our counties is the size of some entire states. So, you know, it's a little different perspective, but you know, that is an issue in New Mexico. And I think that's something that will be changing dramatically based upon some of the information I've read about, you know, some monies that have been set aside for increasing the internet and the infrastructure from a digital perspective anyway, in different parts of the state. I don't know the specifics on that. So I encourage people to kind of maybe contact your local representatives about what's going on in your county or your region. But yes, I mean, that definitely falls under the umbrella of an accessibility issue that rural markets typically have to deal with that urban markets generally don't.
That may be true in some cases. Most of the time, a person has a landline that they connect to the internet with. Some of us use it and some of us try to use it, but are unable to because the internet provider is so erratic in being able to continue their signal to that source. So you choose to rely on other avenues to get a electronic source to where you're at. It's a very difficult situation. Even in Albuquerque, there are several areas that cannot provide a good, decent internet service.
Yeah, that's true. Does anyone who hasn't, you know, there's a lot of people don't have their video on, which is, you know, fine, but it'd be nice to see your shining faces. You know, one thing about not having videos, I don't know who's actually here versus someone who's like gone to get a snack or something.
But Christina, that kind of speaks to the internet instability in rural areas.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep our
Yeah, that's the
video
truth.
off, we stay connected. If we put our video on, we can get kicked off.
Exactly, Carol.
Yeah, exactly. Are there other types of infrastructure issues that you feel are more applicable to rural markets versus urban markets?
This is Carol again, and I would say challenge with the EBT snap machine connectivity.
So that would be a internet issue. Is that accurate, do you think?
Yes, because I even have that in Gallup, which is compared to some places urban, but I feel it's rural, so because of the infrastructure challenges and the size.
Okay. How about things like transportation, customer transportation? I mean, we know based upon surveys that we've done that, at least for double up customers, that most of the farmers market customers arrive to markets using their cars. And but in urban areas, you know, there's more people walking and there's more people taking buses, and occasionally you'll get someone who takes the train from Albuquerque to Santa Fe or the other way if they want to see a different market. And I'm wondering what you all, if you have a sense in your community about attendance in your market, if it would change if there was something like public transportation in your communities that is currently a limiting factor. I mean, how many in your communities do you feel aren't getting to market because they don't have access to transportation?
My market itself has the majority of the people use car or vehicle transportation or have someone to drive them to the market. They even ride their bikes to the market or horses or whatever other transportation that they have. But we don't necessarily, we don't have a public transportation service here. It's very, very hard to find a good transportation service that anybody can use. Taxis are not available. The train is so far away and they're not running anymore. I guess, I don't know. I haven't heard one in a long time. And as far as the rail runner is concerned, there is no bus transportation. It's difficult.
Probably the biggest impact for that also is for the seniors, because there's no transportation for seniors to get to the market. So unless they can catch a ride with family or they're still able to get around on their own, then that's a limiting factor. WIC moms too, but seniors more so.
I'm wondering if you rural market managers feel like, or what the customer traffic at your markets would look like if there was public transportation. Do you have a sense that there's a wide group in your community who would want to get to market who simply can't? Or do you not have a sense of who those folks might be that aren't able to make it to your market?
This is the question that I ask myself every year. Who didn't come to market that wanted to come to market? We have put out flyers of different kinds to pass out to others that are there. And I tell people, if you don't have a way to come to market, let me know and I will get you to market. And I have not heard from anyone yet.
Does anyone else have any experience with that or thoughts about people who have contacted you wanting to get to market but they can't?
So we had one of our volunteers at the Farmington market actually ride the bus from her house to the market 4 or 5 times to kind of figure out what the inadequacies of our transportation system in Farmington were. In the rest of San Juan County, that would be like a joke. But I think it took her almost an hour and a half to get to market riding the bus, like, I don't know, I would say less than 6 miles. And so that was a big shift for us because we had always advertised, like, get on the Blue Line bus. It drops off at the museum, at the market. But so what we did is we wrote a letter to the city transportation department. And it's slightly convenient that the guy that runs the transportation department sells salsa at the market. That's always a good thing in a rural community. But I think it really is just like figuring out what that transportation system actually looks like. Because we thought that the bus came to market and we advertised that forever. And then I can't imagine how many people just got off the bus, like they were trying to get to market. And then the reality of that actually being a system that could provide that was not actually real.
I don't know about counties, but I know that in the city of Santa Fe, if you're a senior citizen, you can schedule a pickup and drop off. And maybe timeliness is not one of their strong suits, but I do think that if you know in advance that you want to go, you can schedule with the senior van and they will pick you up and take you. And I don't know about the picking you back up at the end of market or any of that, but I do know that at least Santa Fe County, which as we know is maybe a more affluent county, that there is that service available to seniors.
Although that only runs on Monday through Friday, I think. So, for
yes,
market
I think you're right.
on the weekend, that's a challenge. And I think, Sarah, if you remember a number of years ago where we worked with the senior center, one of the senior centers in Santa Fe, and we found a champion. We found a person who lived, well, she wasn't at the senior center, but she lived in one of the senior housing areas, and she was a champion for the farmers markets. And so she requested, because it had to come from someone who themselves was a senior. And so she requested a bus to come to their senior housing. And again, it works in Santa Fe because there is a Tuesday market, but she had that bus scheduled to come and pick up seniors who were interested in going. Eventually it kind of fizzled out. I think, I don't know if she moved or lost interest or whatever, but finding those champions who may be connected. And again, it's best if, I think, when your market has a weekday market, it may not work as well for Saturday only markets.
And one reason, go ahead, Kirsten.
I was just going to say I was on a call with folks running programs like mine in rural West Virginia. And they somehow wrote into a grant funding so that the local senior centers could put folks on the buses after senior lunch. So folks had to and from the senior centers. So the senior centers were located more centrally. So folks had an easier time getting to the senior center. And then the longer drive was to the market. And they had great success with that. But, every community is specific, but there are thoughts around things like that, like congregating folks and then getting them on the transportation.
Yeah, for rural markets, for a wide variety of people, and seniors definitely make the top of the list, getting to market and just having the transportation is a large barrier. And in rural areas where population is, sparse and frequently spread out farther, getting those people to market is can be a real challenge, but also something that could provide a lot of rewards, not only for the market in terms of a larger customer base, but also for the consumer and the community member to take part in local food system. And that issue brings me up to kind of the second topic that I wanted to bring up, was this idea of rural community partnerships. One study that I found pointed out that rural market success is intrinsically tied to local community partnerships more so than urban markets. And, I'm curious to hear from y'all what partnerships that you have created in your rural locales. And if you haven't made any connections, what partnerships can you potentially see trying to investigate that would either increase your customer base or service at your rural market? So when you're thinking about your local communities, what kind of partnerships have you either tried or intend to try to the benefit of your market?
Hi, this is Trini King. I'm with the Shiprock Farmers Market.
Hi, Trini.
And thank you for having this wonderful conference. It's always informative, and there's always great speakers. So just in saying, with having a rural community, or being a market in a rural community, and what is a rural community? I think if anybody goes through any type of countryside or borderline town to, or borderline community in a town, near a town area, that's considered rural as well. Just like Pauline was saying, she's an Aztec, but if you go a certain miles a different direction, you'll be in Farmington. You go the opposite direction, you're in countryside. So just as being in Shiprock, we have one grocery market center, and a bunch of different fast foods and fuel convenience stores. And talking about partnerships, we were able to, after the Gold King mine spill, we were able to reestablish ourselves and reinstate the name of the Shiprock Farmers Market. So 2018, we, kicked off again, and, farmers started feeling safe about, selling their produce, just based on the different type of trainings that were offered through the local land grant schools, New Mexico State University to Diné College, San Juan College. We were able to, get the produce tested and, feel safe about eating our produce again, along the San Juan River. So in saying that, the market, came back, we've been coming back strong every single year. But one of the things that we really have to give it up to is not just the farmers and, the consumers who stop by the market, but, the partnerships as well. We partnership with the local Indian hospital here in Shiprock, the Northern Navajo Medical Center, with the FVRX program that we are in partnership with COPE as well, with Carol Palmer. I think Carol's on this call. But it's just partnerships like that with local farmers markets, different organizations, whether it's the tribal organizations like the senior centers, down to the daycares and the charter schools and the local tribal government system. We are able to work in partnership with communities. And I think it's just opening up, yourself as, not just thinking about, running a market, but actually feeling enthusiastic and having that passion to continue to come back and to run another market, whether you're getting paid for it or not. But just in saying with partnership, we can build a rural market into something bigger and greater if we just open up to different community organizations, big and small, and businesses as well. But that's all I have to say about that. But thank you, though.
Thank you, Trini. Thank you very much for sharing that. Any other experiences or thoughts on community partnerships as it relates to the success of your market?
Well, it's similar to what Trini said, in terms of like reaching out to the senior center or daycares in the area, to reach the kids, and making a connection with the schools in your area. And also partnering with the WIC office, to get them to come down to market to distribute checks and things like that. Going to the food bank.
How about things just like, I don't know, local community centers, churches, grade schools, any kind of elementary schools, even high schools, you know, or even places like the, you know, locally owned hardware stores, or, you know, dance studios or whatever, you know, anything that's kind of locally owned, tied to the community.
I was just going to mention that doing a presentation for city council has also been really helpful, and just we try to do that twice a year, where we'll do a report, and we are on city property, so it's a little bit different, but even just including your city councilors. And we've also tried in non-COVID years to invite community members to come ring the bell at opening market, and just try to have different involvement from different community groups as kind of like an opening of the stock market or something like that, kind of bell that will do like a Facebook Live ad. And that was a good way to kind of showcase different community members, and then also get them and their constituents to market. And so that's been helpful.
Thank you. Has anyone tried to connect with local medical services, clinics, doctors' offices, even dentists? You know, because healthy eating is intrinsically tied to pretty much any doctor office or clinic. Janet, you have your hand raised?
Yes, and our medical clinic is very much diet oriented and nutrition oriented, and we end up being on a lot of different boards together. But I have found that the Chamber of Commerce is a real good partner here too, and they did a video already this year, live, you know, while we were at market, and so it's been a really good partner for us.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Chamber of Commerce partnership? I mean, was that difficult to set up, and what have been the benefits of that, in your opinion?
The benefits is publicity, and what they've done, and so I've done it for a couple different things, the food bank and the farmers market, and but they have highlighted a different nonprofit every week, and or business like a restaurant, and that person speaks for about 10 minutes on video, and then so that's on Facebook, and so that alone has really helped. And then yeah, again, we're kind of on different boards at the same time, so even when we're at a different meeting, something might come up about the market when I'm at the Bosque meeting, or you know, and that's, I think a lot of rural areas are like that. We are so limited in population that the busiest people do so much. But it's a good connectivity.
Yeah, rural markets, taking part in community partnerships, it kind of has a cross-pollinating effect, you know, where the more deeply you get into, you know, a wider variety of partnerships, eventually, you know, it's like a web that kind of can cover a community, and for more benefit than, you know, maybe urban markets, just because,
yes,
you know, it's a little more like a snow globe.
Yeah, I can see that.
Thank you, Janet. Bonnie, you have your hand raised.
I was just going to say, I was really surprised at dental offices wanting to participate. I actually had like multiple that wanted to, and dentists make so much money. I've been like blown away by it. But in our community, they have the most money to spend on marketing, other than like any other health profession. And it's like cutthroat. Like, how do you get more dental customers? Because everybody hates going to the dentist. And so they do great giveaways. And so I'll usually save them for like National Farmers Market Week and then have them do a big promotional table where they do giveaways and things like that. So I have found by giving them a priority date and asking them in advance when they want to participate, then that's been really surprisingly successful for us.
So do they in turn like post at their offices your posters or outreach materials?
Yeah, so typically what we will do, and I'm like, oh, this is a good opportunity to update my community booth request form. And so I can post it in the chat because I'm almost done updating it and opening it for the year. But one of the things that we request on our community booth form is like, how are you going to advertise for the market in your space? If we're giving you a free community booth at the market during a peak day, what are you going to do for us? And we can send out things like letters, and we'll even, we try to make it mutually beneficial. So we can put a little blurb about their business in our customer email. And if everyone doesn't have a customer email, I highly suggest using MailChimp. It's just like a super easy free service. And I just have a click button where people can click on our Facebook page and our website to join our customer newsletter. And that's been really helpful. And so then I'll send out the business's information or like the nonprofit's business or information in our customer newsletter. And then I kind of give them a letter to like do in turn for us. And like I've suggested things like to do for them to purchase market tokens. I'll have them purchase debit tokens to do like a giveaway for their staff to come shop at the market that day. And that's been really successful with like San Juan Regional Hospital. They've done like weekly giveaways where they'll give $50 in market bucks. And I just use the debit tokens in a cute bag. And then they advertise that to their employees.
Nice. Yeah, if you could put that in chat, that'd be really generous. The link to that, because that might be helpful for other markets who want to try to start doing the same thing. Are there any markets who have tried to connect with a community partner where it didn't turn out so well? And do you have any words of advice and for those who might end up in a similar situation on ways that to kind of smooth things over or to improve the situation? Okay, does anyone have anything else that they want to say about community partnerships before I kind of move on to the next topic? Okay, well, if something comes to mind, just use your raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen or wherever it's located.
I had one more thought that one thing that we kind of grapple with at the Farmington market is like, do we have a price? Like can we be bought by like a local business? Because typically with our community events, they are only for like nonprofits or local community organizations like the theater group or a 4-H club. But we were approached a couple years ago by Renewal by Anderson for some reason. And I don't know if any other markets in the state have done this, but they do it up in Colorado, where they consider farmers markets to be like their target demographic. And so up in Durango, they pay almost $3,000 a year to have a vendor booth at the Durango farmers market. And so that's something that we've gone back and forth with as a board. Like, do we have one space at our market that we're willing to sell for a decent amount of money to a corporate business that isn't quite in line with maybe the other things for our community booth? And we've decided, yes, we do have a price, and we will we will sell that space in order to keep the vendors' fees affordable. That's kind of how we justify it. So we have not actually pulled the trigger and done it, but that's been something that we've thrown around for the last few years as a way to diversify the market and maybe go one step beyond the community booth. But I don't know if that's something anybody else wants to discuss, or if they have thoughts, or if anybody has taken the plunge to actually do that with like a dental group or like something similar that really wants to get into our target audience.
George, you have your hand raised.
Yes. I don't know whether anyone else has had this challenge, but I'm going to bring mine out. I have been contacted by several places, entities that are local to me, and they want me to manage their farmers market. I don't have time, but they want the farmers market that they want on the days that I am operating my other farmer market. And I tell them this, I just can't do it. I don't have that many people. It says, we're not that far away from you. Why don't you just bring your, advertise to your customers, set up a bus thing and just bring them on over. It's kind of hard. It really is to say, I can't run your farmer's market. They haven't started one, but by the same token, they don't put any other effort into it. Anybody?
Well, that just speaks to your fame among the market community, George.
The infamous
And
George.
your
Yeah.
market management prowess.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Tease me. I don't care.
I'm serious.
Good job of that too.
Well, it goes along with what Sarah Grant said in her last session, that, when there's a market manager who stays around, and, they're not going to be leaving anytime soon, other people take notice of things like that. There's no doubt about that. So I was half teasing, but I was also, being sincere with that.
Well, and we also get, most years, not so much last year during COVID, and it did kind of quiet down over the last several years, but most years we get lots of requests from miscellaneous, either individuals, or usually it's an organization of some kind somewhere that wants to start a market. And, they've read somewhere, maybe they're with a real estate group or with a bank, whoever they are. And they've read somewhere that, farmers markets are great for communities. And so they're like, oh, I want to we should have one. And so they call us, and, we always tell them that, do you have any vendors? I mean, that's really the first question when they want to. So if somebody's calling you, it's kind of not surprising. They're hoping they can probably spin off your vendors. So we always recommend that they reach out to existing markets, because there just aren't enough farmers to really splinter off too much more. And, Albuquerque, a number of years ago, I don't remember which years, but there were a few years where Albuquerque just like peaked with new markets starting up, here and there. And a couple of them did continue on. The Mile High Darcy's Market was one of those that started then, and it did continue. So if it's got legs, it'll continue. But we always recommend that when these other markets want to start up, that they reach out to existing managers and, join their market, not ask that market manager to start a new. So those people seem like they're pretty bold, George.
Yeah. Denise, that's a great segue to the next topic I wanted to bring up. So basically building a market or maintaining a market so that the customer traffic and the vendor attendance are in balance it's a challenge for markets of any size, but it's a steeper challenge for small markets. And I'm curious to hear from you about how rural markets address this kind of circular challenge of building a vendor base with a somewhat limited to very limited customer base. If anyone would like to speak about that challenge, because that's probably one of the biggest ones that
That's
rural
really
market.
interesting. I don't have a hand raise thing, so I'm just cutting in.
Oh yeah, just if you don't have a hand raise thing, everyone just go.
North of Raymond Market, and that has never been our problem. We had problems with selling out of produce in the first 20 minutes of the market. So customers have never been a problem. And we have about 15 vendors.
Jackie, can you talk a little bit maybe about where you're located and why you think it's not been a problem for you?
We're 50 miles south of Gallup, and I think we're poaching a lot of Carol's customers. People will drive 50 miles to get to our market. And that hit us hard during COVID because we didn't hold the market, but we had these like things called food circles. And people did not drive out for those. And so I don't know, we're a real destination. They drive from Grants, which is also 50 miles away. And that's not the main customer base, but it's definitely, my problem has always been being told, like the vendors will say, why don't you advertise more? And I said, when you have enough produce to go 3 hours, then I'll start doing that, you know, but, I would say about 20%, you know, it got better and better. I mean, the COVID thing was very disruptive politically in Rama. There were other additional problems with weird things, like we set up in this little Mormon town in front of the museum, and I was thinking when you were talking about making collaborative relationships, they asked us to come there and set up because they thought it'd be more business for the museum, and that worked out really well. But there were many people in that community that considered us sort of a liberal socialist communist invasion. And I always thought that was kind of funny, but it really became an issue this last year. But I'm kind of getting off track. It's just that our balance has always been trying to get people, like with gardens, to participate so we could up the produce amount. And then within the last 4 years, we started getting serious farmers, you know, people making the leap to you know, farm full time. And they relied on the market more on advertising. They would come to the market to advertise the fact that they were a going farm, but you know, we were one of their lesser venues. So again, it's totally the opposite. I don't know what to say. We knew we were drawing people off from both Grants and Gallup because they have markets, and they just say, we love it here. It's beautiful. It's under the trees, and it's a very big social thing for them. And all I can say is, if you're short customers, if you make it, like, have music, and we also have occasional events like garden tours, and all that stuff seemed to pay off in the long run. Is that a lot of customers are coming because that's their Saturday morning thing. And if you can become people's Saturday morning thing, that may actually be, we always felt that that was even more important than having produce. If that's possible. The other thing is we always have crafts. I know it's kind of discouraged, but when people have a variety of things that they can find at the market, that's a big plus. And we're very fussy about who we accept. Like, we don't want it to go into flea market stuff. So we're real strict about who the craftspeople are that can participate. I guess we're kind of similar to the Santa Fe market. I noticed, and I push hard doing value added, like, you know, turn your produce into a craft thing, like, you know, that's always been the thing. We're also, I think, going into like the 25th year or something like that. And it just makes a difference that you have all those years of reputation that you can kind of fall back on.
Yeah, that consistency, I think, really speaks a lot to both customers and vendors. And, you know, each community is different. So it's, you know, it's fine to have craft vendors. You know, it's nice if they're supplying locally made or produced candles, soaps, that kind of thing. We just want to make sure that there's enough locally grown food that is being sold at market, so it's an actual farmer's market, but we don't discourage crafts. It's just about balance. So you are meeting the needs of the customer, for nutrition, and also, locally produced goods if they want that. Amanda, you've had your
I
hand
spend
up.
my time on craftspeople explaining to them how to market. I mean, I consider them as important as the produce people because we're such a little market.
Yeah.
And we're not that impacted by. I feel bad about this. You would think EBT would really. I mean, I think it's growing. Our biggest EBT base probably comes down from Zuni, and that's 20 miles away. But once they figured out the double up bucks thing, they would travel to 20 miles to be able to take advantage of that.
That's great.
But it's still not a real significant part of, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that if people can afford to drive 50 miles to a farmer's market, they're probably the higher income people and they don't have EBT. And so that's a big part of our customer base is we're this charming little market that they drive to. And some of them are deadly serious about the produce. It's not that, they're the best customers because you get feedback from them. And the other thing that's been happening, I sell to La Montanita. Apparently, I am the only local producer for the Gallup La Montanita. I'm the only one that sells local produce to La Montanita. And people go, well, who is this? Who is this farmer? And they say, oh, well, she's at the Rama Farmers Market. And so there's ways to build customer base by diversifying who you sell to. This is a tough sell. I mean, most producers want to come to the Rama market and there's this whole sideline thing going here on the chat about problems with the community table. They want to dump their stuff off and have somebody else sell it for them because they can't, farmers are bad that way. And the whole ticket, I give marketing workshops for farmers. And it's like, you need to connect with that customer. And you guys know all about that, okay? But it's a tough sell. It's like you want to build your customer base. You need, each individual farmer has to do that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them don't want to.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, Jackie. It was really valuable information. Amanda, you've had your hand up for a little bit. You want to share what you've got to say?
Yeah, I'm going to try and run with my video on. I'm in the rain right now. I'm in Ohio.
So thank you so much for coming.
I was going to say, kind of glad that we are doing it in the Zoom format right now because it gave me the chance before busy season starts to get out and do a vacation with the boyfriend who's a truck driver. So that's why I've kept my video off, is because the signal's not great all the time. But this is my second year as the market manager. Last year we started a community table, and it was what it was because it was new. Nobody really understood it. But we had one dedicated young lady who came every week to bring her stuff for the community table. We did take care of the processes for her, taking the payment so that way she didn't have to stay, which helped because her husband's military and they have a child. So it was kind of hard for her to always guarantee that he would be able to keep the baby. But by the end of the season, she had seen so much profit and turnaround on it that she started setting up her own table and became a full-fledged vendor. And she's already reached out to me ready to set up this year straight off the bat as a vendor. But sorry, my brain just went to.
That's okay.
We haven't made any community partnerships on my side because I took over 2 months prior to COVID starting. Our previous market manager retired in January, Diana, and she, as far as I know, is enjoying retirement. But we, as far as what we've seen with transportation issues, is some of our seniors will be able to get one ride a month to come in, and so they wait until the end of July, or they'll wait until August to start coming. They won't try and come in June because they know that we're low on produce. And one of our vendors, two of our vendors always have a line, and they sell out within 30 minutes of market starting. So that's been great. I was reached out by a new market manager in Tiburon. She's actually my co-admin for the homeschool group, and she saw a need in Tiburon to have a farmer's market. And so she reached out to me, and I referred her to you all to get started. And she does it twice a month in the afternoons on Saturdays, so it wouldn't conflict with my vendors. So I always recommended that my vendors go up there if they had any extra produce to sell, to do it. A lot of them were kind of iffy on it because it is an hour and 15-minute drive from Alamogordo to Tiburon. So what I started doing was taking the produce for those vendors up to the Tiburon market. So that way they would still sell out for the day, but they wouldn't have to make the drive. And then when I came back down the mountain, I would meet them in town, give them any produce that was left over and their proceeds from the market. And the first time we had one vendor. By the end of the market and the end of my season, hers went a week or a couple of months after mine. There was 4 vendors sending food up with me to take part in the Tiburon market because they had seen me for the first market. I didn't meet the vendors afterwards. They completely sold out. So they're like, just bring us the money on Saturday, the next market day. And so they saw me take the money to them, and they heard them like talking about how much they had made extra after the first market, our market. And so the next week, that next one that we went to, they're like, can you take our stuff too? And then by the end of the season, we did have one vendor who started making the trip up by themselves to sell because they sold out the first market they went to in Tiburon. So I'm glad that Tiburon had the market last year. Unfortunately, I'm not sure they're going to have their market this year. Their situation is a little up in the air right now. I want to do everything I can to support them because they're the only market that in Alamogordo or in Otero County that talks with me. There's a big disconnect between myself and the other Saturday morning market, and I'm not sure how to mend that bridge yet. So I'm going to work. I've been working on it. Every time I see them, I talk to them. I'm polite. But I don't know what kind of bad blood I came into between the two of them. I've not asked Diana about it because I wanted to respect her privacy on it. When we would talk about it, she'd just be like, it's just a long story and I don't want to get into it. So I respected that. But I'm always just wanting to help people. Sarah Grant said something when we talked a couple of weeks ago that I am a services type of person, and that is who I am. I want to help everybody I can as much as I can to make things work. And that's the reason when it was brought up last year that some of the markets did a community table, I was like, that's what my market needs to do.
Yeah, you brought up several really great topics, Amanda. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that. It was like you're this little food distribution system on your own, representing for vendors getting their produce up to Tiburon. And then also, and that kind of cooperation is really special. But the other thing you brought up was this, encouraging seniors to how the seniors wait because they can only make, one trip a month, how they wait until like July, August, and that just really brings up how important it is to communicate seasonality and harvest seasons to people like seniors or those who don't have regular transportation about the best times to come to maximize the farmers market. So May, not great time to do that, but August, September, when you're starting to get into the peak growing season, that kind of communication is really important to encourage that customers are happy with the market when they do attend. So that's great. So thank you, Amanda, for that. I saw a comment from Joanne at Santa Rosa Farmers Market that I wanted to read and have folks comment on. Joanne, she wrote in chat, she said, Santa Rosa Market, we've had our growers retiring, and that has been our challenge the last 2 years, and we're not sure how to address it. We were blessed with a new grower who is younger and has been our main grower for the past 2 seasons. I'm wondering if there's other markets out there who are experiencing the same type of challenge, and if you have any thoughts about how you are trying to address that issue. So that'll be like the last topic that we discussed during the Rural Farmers Market Forum, but feel free to bring it up in Sarah Grant's Urban Farmers Market Forum, which will be following this one immediately after this is ended. So Joanne, since you wrote the topic, would you like to just speak a little more about that from your experience?
Sure.
It's nice to see you.
Like I said, the last few years we've had growers retiring. We've had a few get sick, so they've had to retire, and just no one that is interested in those big farms that we've had. We've been blessed, like I said, with Sally Brown, and that's her main work. She is a grower. She's out there with a huge variety. She tries new stuff and she gets people to take it home and try it. She sends it home with them. So that's neat. She said she just wants to feed her community. So that's awesome. We've tried to get our backyard growers that have all this extra stuff that just hand it out to their neighbors and give it away at work. But we just haven't had the interest. I don't know what to do there. So we run into that part of our season when we run into the problem of running out of produce for our customers.
Have you thought about a community table idea?
I have offered and we just can't get the interest. I don't know what to do there. I was listening to some of the ideas and hopefully, we were going to try new stuff this year. Hopefully we'll be able to do it this season. We were going to try stuff last year, but COVID.
Yeah.
Hopefully things will change. We'll be able to bring entertainment in. We lost our crafters last year because we couldn't have them there because of the wording and the restrictions. So our county where we were, where our market was, they did not allow us to have crafters, just growers.
Mm-hmm.
We actually moved our market this year. We will be in front of City Hall. So we'll have more space to spread out. We'll have better parking, so maybe people will see it more. They'll be able to see it from the road better. So we'll see. We're going to try new things this year. Trying to think outside the box.
Thank you, Joanne. Does anyone have any suggestions about how to encourage community members to send some of their leftover produce or excess from their backyard gardens to market? One thought I had would be to couch it in a, like it's a volunteer activity, as a way to give back to community, and maybe kind of sell it in that kind of context. that might garner a little bit more interest if people feel like they're, fulfilling some sort of volunteer service, even though the food would be for sale.
In past years, we've offered a youth table that's like a card table sized booth, and it's either free or it's like $3. And the idea is that if they had a backyard garden, their children could come and sell. And it's adorable. First of all, it's a crowd pleaser, and it's a way to get people that maybe just have a little bit to come. So we've tried that at our midweek market where we have more space. And it's gone well in some years.
Now that's a great idea because it also provides some, education for the children about economics and things like that. So, and just being assertive, talking to people in a, kind of a professional manner, whatever that means.
And they make like cute little crayon signs, and I mean, you really can't lose with it. It's kind of a fun idea.
Yeah,
we offered that too at the Grants Farmers Market. We said what we would put the age limit 16 and under could sell free. So that encouraged some parents to get out there with their kids. And I mean, I have my kids out there usually too. So just to kind of do it as a family event, and then they keep all the money they're getting for whatever they want to do with it.
George?
At our market, as long as the kid's in school, they can sell at our market if they just abide by the rules. It does not matter. No charge to them whatsoever. If their parents come with them, fine. If they don't want to come with them, that's okay too. We have plenty of people over there that can supervise the ins and outs of their behavior. They don't have a behavior problem if they're growing. It is absolutely fabulous to see. It's really nice to have kids over at the market selling their eggs, lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, whatever they grow in their backyard. It's wonderful. And people buy from them. And they just said, oh, this is great. And they do good. They do real good.
We also have like a kids farmer rate, which is half off the rate, and it's 17 and under. So sometimes we talk to the high school's ag program and tell the kids like it's a good opportunity to make pretty good money, like working for yourself in an outdoor setting and selling at the farmer's market. So that could be a way to market it to kind of like the older high school age kids.
Yeah, it would be, it seems like it would be a potentially a really good way to get the backyard farmers, or backyard growers to get their excess produce to market, because there's the food need is there. And, if they have the excess, it would be nice to sell it, for the economic impact.